Hey, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle a word you hear literally every single day: data. We're going to get right to the heart of what it is, what it isn't, and really how it shapes our world. So, let's dive right in. I mean, think about it. From the websites you browse to the steps your watch is tracking, data is just everywhere. It's so familiar, right? But have you ever actually stopped and asked yourself, what is it? It feels like such a simple question, but trust me, the answer is the key to understanding, well, pretty much everything in our modern world. To really get it, we've got to go back, way back. The word data actually comes from the Latin word datum, and all it means is something given. I just love that because it cuts through all the noise and complexity. At its very core, data is just a basic fact, something given. That's it. So here's our working definition. Data is just a raw, unprocessed, recorded observation. It could be a number, a word, a measurement, you name it. But here's the crucial part. By itself, it's totally meaningless. It's inert. Take the number 37.5. It's just a number floating in space. It doesn't tell us a thing. So how in the world do we get from a meaningless number to a powerful insight? Well, there's this brilliant framework for it called the DIKW Pyramid. It's like a ladder that shows us how we climb from raw data to information, then up to knowledge, and finally, all the way to wisdom. Let's walk up this pyramid with our number, 37.5. See, at the very bottom, we just have the raw data. But when we add context like, oh, that's a body temperature in degrees Celsius, boom, it becomes information. Then when we compare that information to a known pattern, the normal temperature for a person, we gain knowledge. Hey, this is a mild fever. And finally, when we apply our judgment to that knowledge, we get wisdom. Okay, the patient should rest and drink some water. And here it is, the whole journey laid out. You see, we don't make decisions based on raw data. We make them based on wisdom. A ton of data projects actually fail because people try to jump straight from the bottom of the pyramid to the top without doing the work of building understanding in between. So, as we just saw in that pyramid, the first and most critical step is adding context. Honestly, context is the magic ingredient. It's what turns all that raw data into something we can actually use. Without it, data isn't just meaningless, it's just noise. I absolutely love this analogy. It just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? You can look at all the numbers and charts you want, but without context, it's like watching a movie in a language you don't speak. You see the action, but you're missing the entire story. And check this out. It's a perfect example, the number 1,000. Is that good or bad? Well, if it's 1,000 new customers this month, that's amazing. But if it's 1,000 system errors in the last hour, that is a full-blown crisis. See? The number itself didn't change at all, but the context changed everything. And this brings us to a really core idea in data analysis. You have to separate the signal from the noise. The signal is the good stuff, the meaningful pattern you're actually looking for. The noise is just everything else, all the random stuff, the errors, the junk. And context, well, context is the tool we use to tune everything in, filtering out all that static so we can finally hear the signal loud and clear. Okay, so now that we've got a handle on what data is at its core, let's talk about its different forms. Kind of like food, right? Data comes in all sorts of different flavors and textures, and knowing what kind you're working with is so important for figuring out how to use it. First off, we can sort data by its structure. Structured data is the neat and tidy stuff you see in a spreadsheet, perfect rows and columns. Easy to work with. But here's the wild part. Something like 80% of all the data in the world is unstructured. We're talking emails, photos, audio files, all the messy stuff with no fixed format. And then, kind of in between, you have semi-structured data, like a JSON file, which uses tags to create some order, but it's still pretty flexible. We can also group data by what it describes. So you've got quantitative data, which is all about numbers. It answers how much or how many. Think revenue or our temperature example. On the other side, you have qualitative data, which is descriptive. It answers what kind or why. Think about the actual text in customer reviews. Honestly, the real magic happens when you combine them both. You get the what from the numbers and the why from the stories. And finally, where's all this data coming from? The source has a huge impact on how much you can trust it. First-party data is the gold standard. It's the stuff you collect yourself so you know exactly where it's been. Second party is when a trusted partner shares their data with you. And then there's third-party data, which is basically bought from big aggregators. You get a lot of it, but the quality can be pretty shaky, and it's facing more and more privacy questions. All right, for our last section, we really need to talk about some super common and pretty dangerous myths about data. It's time to challenge some of the things we just assume are true and uncover some of the biases that are hiding just beneath the surface. Okay, let's bust these myths one by one. First, more data is always better. Nope, false. A small, clean, relevant data set is way more valuable than a giant, messy one. Second, data is objective, not a chance. Data is always a product of human choices. And the biggest myth of all, data speaks for itself. It absolutely never, ever does. It always needs a person to interpret it. This quote really gets to the core of it. Data is not some perfect mirror of reality. It's more like a photograph taken by a specific person from a specific angle. And what they choose not to measure? Well, that's just as important as what they do. The absence of data can be a huge form of bias all on its own. So here's the main takeaway. We have to treat data as an incredibly powerful tool, but not as some perfect objective truth. It gives us evidence. It gives us a perspective. It's a lens we can use to look at the world, but it is not the final verdict. That part, that requires our own critical thinking. And that brings us to the end. We've learned that data is really just the beginning of the story, that context is absolutely everything, and that data always carries the fingerprints of the people who created it. So I'll just leave you with this thought. Since we know data never speaks for itself, the next time you see a chart or a statistic, what questions are you going to ask before you decide to believe it?